Welcome to this Qualoupe class in which we're going to look at the Sample Manager. So on my favourite screen I have the icon here, Sample Manager, so click on that to launch it. So here's the Sample Manager screen. So we're going to go straight in and create a new sample record. So I'll click on New Record, and you can see here against sample ID we've got some instructions: leave blank for default. So I'll do that to start off with, but if you have a sample ID you wanted to enter, you could type that in. So I'll show you that separately in a moment. So I'm going to create a sample from a material and specification that are in the system. So if I click on Material, a list of available materials is presented, so we'll choose this one. And then the material contains one or more specifications which have the actual test methods and limits stored in them. If there is only one specification, that will automatically populate, but this material has got two, I know, so if I click on here I have a choice between two specifications. So I shall choose the 500 hours. And there's other descriptive information you can put in for your sample, as a lot of these Qualoupe screens have got. So in remarks you could type in any relevant information. If your sample comes from an external lab or a customer, they might have sent you a reference ID, reference code associated with that sample. You could type that into there. Samples can be associated to batches, projects, customers. So I shall look up customer and just show you that all the lookups operate the same. They show you a list of available records in the system that you can choose to associate with this sample record. So we'll have that one, and at this point I'm just going to save my changes. So that's just saving for a moment. Okay, so the sample ID has automatically been populated with a system generated sample ID. The methods from the selected specification have been applied to this sample. If you go to the Results Entry tab, you can see the parameters. There's a slightly bold line, so that's the appearance method, metals method, pH method. There's a bold line separating those as well. Now the sample has gone in at a status of N because it's a new sample, and if you can see the results are greyed out because N is a status to say this record has been created in the system, as in it's in Qualoupe, but as yet the physical sample hasn't got to the lab. So assuming that it has, we can update the status to pending, and having done that, I'll just let it catch up, we then have all these fields unlocked and we have the opportunity to enter results. If you don't need a separate sample receipt stage, in the Application Manager you can set system settings such that any new sample automatically goes in straight away at status P, but on this system it's set to create the samples at status N. Okay, I'm going to create another sample now. So I'll click on New again. Now one of the things, I better select some material, let's do the same one again. One of the things I was telling you about before was you can associate a sample with a batch. So if I click on Batch, you can see I have two batch records which I can associate this sample with. But if I wish to associate it with a brand new batch, I could do this by creating the batch in Batch Manager and adding the samples to it there. But for new samples only, there is a button, Create a New Batch, which is active. If it's editing an existing sample, this button is greyed out. So I'm going to click on that and enter my batch ID. So rather unimaginatively I'll call it BAT001. The there's a little bit more information you could put in about your batch. For example, if it's a customer batch, they might have an ID that you might want to enter into there. If it's a production batch or an intermediate product, you might actually have a quantity you want to put in, but I shall just leave it with the batch ID. So this sample is now going to be associated with this new batch, and if I choose to create 4 samples rather than 1, save my changes. So the changes have been saved, but you can't really see very much what's gone on here. So if I highlight that and click on Control-C on the keyboard to copy it, if I load the records and I filter on that one, is it going to do it? Oop, I've got to click on this tab. There we are. There's my 4 records that I've just created, so I'll select them all. And you can see we have sequentially numbered samples, 99, 100, 101, 102, which are the 4 samples I specified, and they're all associated with this batch. One more thing I'd like to show you in here. I selected a material and a spec by which these 3 methods were added to the sample. If you have sufficient privileges, your Qualoupe user has been granted the privileges, you can edit the methods that are on the sample. So if I select, I'll just let that load. If I select all methods there, I can look up all currently live methods in my system. I only seem to have 4, so I could add average weight, continue, save. And similarly, if I decided I didn't want to test pH on this sample, I could delete the method. Just waiting for the screen to catch up. There we are, and save changes. So you have a certain amount of ability to edit the methods and the material that are on your sample, but generally you would choose your template from material and spec, and it will just automatically add the methods. So that's about it for this class. In a subsequent class we'll move on to results entry and we'll look at the rules for that. Okay, thank you very much indeed.